For Real Agriculture, I'm Kelvin Hepner at the CropConnect Conference in Winnipeg, Manitoba, and joined now by Scott Shearer, professor and chair at The Ohio State University, fresh off his presentation talking about compaction and the latest on compaction research, the impact on yield. Scott, when it comes to tires versus tracks, it's always a big question, a popular question. What are the kind of maybe the top three scenarios where you see potential or value in potentially switching from tires to tracks?
So what we know from field investigations that we've done, there's two things that farmers really need to be thinking about when they ask themselves a question about tires versus tracks. Obviously, there is an adder when you go to tracks. If you're buying a new machine and you can buy a wheeled version of it or a track version of it, there's going to be that price differential. And so the farmer has to look at that price differential and ask themselves, is that something that's of value to me? The two areas that I encourage them to think about is productivity. In other words, how many acres per hour they're going to cover with the machine. That really depends upon the tillage operation. The second one then is fuel use rate for that machine. And what we're finding is the track machines generally, we have greater productivity. There's less slip, if you want to think of it that way. We don't eliminate slip, but there's less slip. And then we actually see probably a 10 to 15% reduction in fuel cost associated with that. And those are really the two big takeaway messages as far as tracks versus tires and their value. The other thing is, and we've done some studies with tracks on grain carts versus wheels on grain carts, and in both cases, under unfavorable soil conditions, we'll see a yield loss the following year by trafficking with a loaded grain cart. We see less of an impact with track machines than we do with wheeled machines. So there is a potential there in terms of a yield impact from tracks on a machine. Again, it's all depends upon the soil conditions at harvest. Another area we're seeing a lot of value in tracks is on central fill planters. And what we usually talk about is the pinch rows, and those are the essentially rows that go underneath the wheels on the central part of the central fill planter. And what we're seeing there is 5, 6, 7 acre yield improvement by going to tracks. Okay, and we've done it for a couple of years. I'd like to say that they're going to get that every year, but it really depends upon, again, the soil conditions in some respects.
So grain carts and those central fill planters, both applications that you see potential value in.
Yeah, and then we go back to the tractor, and again, what's the difference on the adder? But again, what's going to drive that in some respects is going to be that productivity or acres per hour, and then also the fuel use rates. Okay. So those are my recommendations to get farmers thinking about. On the one side, it's kind of we're looking at the soil response and what the reduction in compaction might mean. It'd be a fallacy, though, for me to tell you that tracks eliminate compaction, okay? Gross vehicle weight drives compaction. I don't care how you spread it out. It's just that we lessen the influence, if you will, gross vehicle weight when we do go to track machines.
Okay. Going back to your findings on central fill planters and those pinch rows, what's the hypothesis on why we might be seeing increased yield in those rows?
Yeah, there's a couple things going on. First of all, in our observations are whether you're wheeled or tracks, if you're moving a lot of soil at planting time, there's probably going to be a negative yield impact. We have had years when the soil's been relatively dry that we see a positive impact from the tracks. What I'm saying is we get yields above what the wing rows are. And our theory there is we might have consolidated the soil and gotten better seed-soil contact where those tracks are running close to the rows where they were the seed was put in the ground. But again, you got to be careful, but we've seen pretty consistently a yield advantage for tracks on a central fill planter versus wheels on a central fill planter.
All right. Thanks for your time today, Scott.
Thank you very much.